Good morning. So I know time is of the essence, so I'm just going to jump right into it. This talk is called The Myth of Truth. What do you know for sure? It seemed like a good place to start. For me, truth is both concrete and elusive, very, very in keeping with. And so, we don't compare notes before the day. So I had no idea what Myers was going to say. And the intricacy of truth is something that I think is worth all of us noting and paying attention to. We seek truth. We come to moments where we know truth. We argue with truth often. And we try to live in truth on a daily basis. But as we aspire to live this life of truth, I think it's always important for us to know and acknowledge and share with each other, how did we come to know that truth about anything? Because in the absence of that, then we just start talking about what the truth is, as opposed to our journey toward that truth. And the journey toward that truth is probably as important, if not more important, than whatever it is we think that truth is in the moment. In The Science of Mind, which was written in 1926, thank God for electronic copies of the wisdom words. When I searched for truth inside The Science of Mind, there were 221 references just to the word truth. But in the foreword, so before you read anything in The Science of Mind, this is what Ernest Holmes says. In presenting these lessons on mental science, I do not claim to have discovered any new truth. The truth has been known in every age by a few. But the great mass of people has never even dreamed that we live in a mental and spiritual world. Today, however, there is a great inquiry into the deeper meaning of life because the race has reached a state of unfoldment where a broader scope is possible. These lessons are an attempt to put into the spoken word and into print some of those great truths known to the enlightened of all ages. The truth comes to us from all sources, and our understanding of it is the result of the time, thought, and effort of thousands of people who have given their lives to its study. This is what Ernest Holmes says in 1926, when The Science of Mind was originally published. So 7 years shy of the 100th anniversary of the sharing of those thoughts, are we any further along in understanding, accessing, and living what is true? The Gospel according to Merriam-Webster says this about the definition of truth: the body of real things, events, and facts. A transcendent, fundamental, or spiritual reality. A judgment, proposition, or idea that is true or accepted as true. Remember that one. Fidelity or faith to an original or to a standard. And finally, Christian Science, or God? So I'm going to ask you to focus on these three questions for the next 10 minutes or so. What are the real things, events, and or facts that inform your truth about God? Basically, what's your journey? What's actually contributing to what you understand the truth of God to be? What do you accept as truth? And specifically focusing on the word accept. Not that you know it, you just accept it as truth. And then finally, are you faithful to the truth of God in your life? We're very critical about how we see others and their living of the truth of God. So I'm just going to ask you to turn that mirror around 180 degrees towards your own self and just see, are you walking around in your own skin, in your life, faithful to what you understand the truth of God to be? So I generally talk about these things in terms of myths, and the first one for today is our truth is not always the truth. This is something that's kind of developed in society, and I don't remember it from when I was younger, so I want to say it's part of my adult experience, or maybe the last 20 years, of this idea of my truth. My truth. My truth. And not checked, my truth is not really about truth as much as what I'm willing to deal with myself. If one definition of truth is a combination of real things and events and facts, and if, as Ernest Holmes tells us, that truth is known in every age by a few, that there is a universal truth or law, if all of that is the case, then maybe our individual truth is not always the truth. And how do we know? What's the sniff test for truth that we operate from? So if your truth is often fraught with like unhealed places, maybe it's not the truth. It may be part of a journey towards a truth, but it may not be. And even if it's true for you, it may not be the truth, universal law truth. Once you bring healing to that area, though, there's the possibility of new understanding, of truth, and then truth kind of naturally surfaces when you have brought healing to some part of your life or your experience or your history. Do you ever notice that something is true, it's true. Like my sister is a broom riding, cauldron stirring, spell casting witch. She is. A blind man could see that she is evil incarnate. And that is your truth. Until you actually get insight, maybe because you prayed for and declared that you want to love your sister more than you currently can, and you want insight into how to love your sister. And all of a sudden, unforeseen conversations and information and circumstances arise so that you can then see this person in the truth of their walk. And then you, in the presence of this new information, have to say, well, that may have been the truth until now, when I am in the presence of more information. So if you find yourselves, we find ourselves using words like all of them and those people and how they get along, how they act. Maybe that's not the truth. It's an expression of your own experience, but not the truth. And one way to check in about your truth is, do you experience more love, more peace, more joy, more connection, more safety in the presence of your truth? Or do you notice that there is your truth and then this experience of life that you know is just on the outside of your truth, that you haven't quite gotten to yet, but that there's more? That might be the sniff test for balancing your truth and the truth. And one other thing about that, the degree to which you're willing to continue looking at those places that may be tender and not fully healed, like there's some healing going on, but it's not scabbed over, it's not closed, it's still in process. Those places are the places where truth can actually begin to surface and reveal itself in a new and different way. The second myth is that our judgments and assessments are the truth. Now, I don't mean those moments where you've been sitting in meditation and you've been connecting with the divine and all manner of information is being imparted into you. So for those of you who are listening to the recording, I'm doing all of these motions like I'm trying to access the other side and all of that. Not that. Not your real spiritual practice, but just your judgments and assessments. And I know nobody judges anybody, that's just me. I know that you all are free from judgment and never assess anyone, including yourselves or your partners or your parents or what. Like, we don't do that. We're spiritual people. We don't judge people and assess people. That just wouldn't be right. But I want you to consider a couple of things that were truth. The world is flat. Women are better nurturers than men. Men are more aggressive than women. The Indians are savages. He is not the Son of God. Everything cannot be healed by prayer. We are the only intelligent life in the galaxy. We have historical record of being wrong about the truth ongoingly. But we don't relate to it, and we actually don't seem to manage to humble ourselves when we come in the presence of new information. Often we'll just try and dismiss it like, oh, well, that's not really that important. But truth has actually, what we've understood truth to be, our judgments and our assessments, have often been the foundation of what we call truth. And even when we involve science, when science evolves, then we don't want to necessarily include that unless it suits us, unless it benefits us in some way. So we only believe something is true until we have more information or experience to know something else. And not just know it as information, but to know it. To actually have it fall as truth upon us. Holmes tells us in his foreword that in 19 1926, there was this unfoldment where a broader scope was possible. In 1926, it had only been 6 years since women in the United States had the right to vote. In 1926, the Jim Crow laws, legal segregation of race, were still in place, had been in existence since 1877. And there was all kinds of truth in the world. So, what's the unfoldment today? What's unfolding today that allows us to see more truth, new truth? We talk so much about what's going on in the country and what's going on around the world. Maybe all of the things that are being driven up are the unfoldment of this time, such that we might be able to inquire with God, what is the truth for us to know today? Because without that, we often just find ourselves talking at each other through judgment, through assessment, and really doing that because we want to have some certainty about what it is we have believed truth to be up until that moment. And maybe there is truth to be revealed to us beyond what we have even comprehended. Today, we're searching for truth rather than asserting what we know as truth. And we've got to get to the place where the pursuit of truth, in the same way that we sing, "There's no separation between me and my God," in the same way that we sing that and we try to bring that into our hearts, then we also have to declare that we receive the truth of this day, even if it shatters everything we understand the world and society to be. See, that's actually living truth. When you are willing not to just defend what you've come to understand as truth, but you are willing to be a receptor for truth as it unfolds today for everyone. Because we've had years now, centuries of building truth to hold small things in place. And we now have an opportunity and a platform for inviting more truth. Finally, this third myth, knowing the truth of God in your life is sufficient. Like, I hear you, Reverend Mark Fowler, and I hear you about all this, expansion and truth for everybody and being a receptor and all that. But what I'm really trying to do is drive down the highway and not run somebody down. I'm just really trying to go to ShopRite and not fight with the guy in the produce department. That's really like my big thing. Like, I just want to make sure that I can get the car serviced and pay my mortgage and not have an ulcer. Like, I got some real-time stuff to deal with. And I got that. I understand that. I've got my own. But what I realize and what I would leave you with is that whatever it is that we have come to as the truth of God is just what we've come to today. And if we are seeking God, if we want to be in relationship with God, then we've got to let God be as broad and expansive as the universe and beyond whatever it is that we have actually come to understand, to be able to transform that which is not in relationship to God. We have to have a willing heart for that. And in whatever language we choose to use, in terms of talking about God, the divine mystery, sacred beloved, whatever it is, We all have had experiences where we know something about the nature of God. We know something. It's not that we question it or we think, we know, we've been through some things where we know something about God. God's mind is our mind. That is revolutionary thought. But what's more revolutionary, or what takes the revolution to a different place, is living what you know. So if you are someone who knows that God is gracious and has bestowed grace unto you, and when I say grace, I am using the definition of the unmerited favor of God, which means that there was nothing that you did where you deserved that favor, and there's nothing that you can do to actually have it taken away. That the favor of God is present for all of us. That our connection to God is present for all of us. And if you've experienced that, how could you not give that to someone else? To just grant them favor. To just be of service to them just because. And to actually live what you know to be true of God. Because other than that, if we don't live what we know to be true, then we are subject to all manner of shenanigans. And we find ourselves in arguments about truth when we're really arguing about judgments and assessments, and God is nowhere in the conversation. We are no longer connected, not to God nor to each other. And I'll just say this. We often talk about the truth that we know of God without talking about how we came to know about that truth. So we tell the end of the story, and we leave out the beginning. We leave out the middle part where, we cursed God, separated ourselves from God, couldn't stand another living being. Like, we leave that whole part out. And we just kind of lead with, this is what I know to be true about God. The greatest gift that you can give to yourself and to each other is to tell and let other people witness how you came to know that. And I know you're not always going to look pretty in that moment. Like the hair and makeup team are like on another part of the set. And they just can't get to you. And you're just going to be a mess. But the sharing of that provides transformation for yourself and for other people. Because when we tell how we came to know the truth about God and about the relationships that we have with each other, then we can actually hold that and believe that and know that for others. So that no person who presents themselves and says something that seems 180 degrees away from where you are, you can know in that moment for yourself and for them, this person knows something about the truth of God, and that's what I want to find out. We are in a moment of unfolding and unfoldment. And this is going to take something different for us to get on the other side of this. We have poisoned the environment, and we can barely stand each other. The only way out of this is through. And the ticket to ride is how much of your truth are you willing to tell? God bless you and thank you so much.